What's going on, everybody? We're back once again with another edition of Wrestling Republic's daily broadcast. It is Thursday, October 26th. Believe it or not, it's nearly Halloween. All of a sudden, we, of course, will be breaking down AEW Dynamite. And not only that, it's Throwback Thursday. So, of course, I've got a sweet crew riding with me as usual, the usual suspects, if you do tune in every Thursday. Let's start out in Philadelphia with our head of opinions, the man, the myth, the legend, Anthony Ricciardi. I know it's been a tough week for Philadelphians, but let's lock it into wrestling today, right?
Yeah, too soon, Clark. There's so much I could say, but they're probably on the banned word list. But you know me well enough what my response would be to that. Well, as far as Tuesday went, did not go well, but a last-minute decision was made, which neither one of you guys know. I was at Dynamite last night, so I could give a little
Whoa.
Oh, we got some live.
It was
Hold up, wait a minute. We don't often get news.
Literally, while the Foleys were blowing at 10:30 at night, me and my buddy Chris, he texted me. He's like, "Yeah, let's do that," and we went last night. So it's the first I'm telling you guys. So I have some information with that show. So we'll see who we go.
That is nothing short of a completely logical move, and I have immense respect for the late audible "let's go to the wrestling show, baseball's not going well."
Well,
that is
the exact text was "F it, let's do it." But
exactly, that's nothing short of, and of course I think he meant frick it when he sent the F, but that's neither here nor there. And before we get into that even further, how about me not even knowing, which is hilarious? Let's introduce our other co-host and then get into the rest of it. But our other co-host tonight is all the way from the DMV. He's putting in a heck of a week. The Tuesday Night Delight, as I like to call him on the Tuesday night show. The co-host with the most. Shad, how you been?
I've been good, bro. It has been a very chaotic week for me in the life of Shad, but I've been good. Nothing bad, busy is always good. But I'm blessed, man. I got to view the good old Dynamite last night. The Phillies, it's all good. We still got the Eagles over here. We win the Super Bowl this year. That's my call. Don't say nothing, Clark. But
I hear you there.
we good though, man. Let's get going.
Hey, I was about to say, I'm not going to say anything other than NFC Championship. I see you in your future, but boy, are those Kansas City Chiefs good.
Like
week 13, Taylor Swift, if you're watching this, because I know you watch our podcast, you better wear the right colors.
You do realize, Clark, if it is the matchup again, it would have to be the tradition. I think we have to do the show again.
Yes. In jerseys, no question.
Yes.
But by the way, more important than that, I know I got two Philly sports fans with me, and jokes aside, you went to Dynamite last minute.
It was a last minute. It was a last minute absolute decision.
Love it. Give me 3 minutes on first AEW live event. You've been to Ring of Honor at WrestleMania week, but how much did you enjoy it?
I enjoyed it. It was it was in the Liacouras, which is a smaller building. It only seats about 10,000. The interesting part I thought was, it was a pretty decent sized crowd, but there were huge sections there was nobody, and a couple there were like scattered people. So I don't know what the situation was. Like, I don't know if those sections weren't on sale, only certain parts were. It was a little confusing with that setup. The only real negative that I had, and I don't think it was a Liacouras thing. I don't know if it was an AEW thing, because I've never gone to one of their shows before. When they were doing promos on the microphone, you really didn't hear it. Like it sounded jumbled. So I had to rewatch the show to catch a lot of the stuff that went on in promos because I didn't catch it. You caught like every other word.
That's fascinating.
Which was a little weird. I enjoyed the show. It had its moments, which obviously we'll get into. But I picked up, oddly enough, they were not selling any Sting t-shirts. I'm like, the man's on his retirement, not selling any Sting shirts at all. They're like, no, all we got is a banner and his gloves. I went, yeah, I'm not interested in that. I did pick up a Better Than You Bebe shirt, and I also picked up an MJF scarf, which said something along the lines. What was the exact lines? I think it says, because I'm too poor for the real one, or something to that effect. It says across the scarf.
I love it. I love it. I love it. And so, hang on, 2 quick questions just before we get into this card, because obviously you being there too.
Yeah.
The 3 of us need to discuss it, but the Better Than You Bebe shirt, does it have like the number styling similar to the Chicago shirt I got, where it's Michael Jordan, and did they do something Philly or no?
No, they didn't. At least if they did anything Philly, I didn't see it. It looked all the standard stuff that they had.
Interesting.
Well, I mean, in your case, it was a pay-per-view.
Right.
Which the one thing that
Grand Slam is pseudo pay-per-view. Yeah. So
I kind of thought it was, Tony comes out to these things. I knew that beforehand. He comes out. And I knew he came to Philly a lot as a kid because he loved ECW. At least that's been talked about, that he went to the ECW arena. The one thing I thought was kind of funny is, like, he's saying on the microphone how much he loves Philly. And I turned to my buddy Chris and I went, he loves Philly so much. It's why he's never done a pay-per-view here.
Fascinating to think about.
When you think about, like, their hottest markets, Chicago, Vegas, you would think Philly, because Philly was a pretty decent crowd. It was very boisterous. I think most of it, I think, carried over on the TV.
It did a lot. It was interesting. I think we saw one comment in the group chat about the crowd being a little quiet, and I made that joke about, like, well, the D-backs did just lose, but I actually didn't have the same feeling when I watched the show.
Well, the one thing, the comment was,
or the D-backs did just beat the Phillies, sorry.
Really, Clark? They
Boo, get this man out the whole
correcting myself. That's just what happened.
The one comment in the group chat you're talking about was that the crowd was kind of quiet for MJF Omega, the announcement. Well, in all fairness, the announcement was, it's not taking place tonight. It's taking place in 3 days. How excited is the crowd going to be that's there if it's not taking place that night?
100%. I'm with you there. And speaking of, we got a comment from our good friend Bobby Petito. Good to see you as usual, Bobby. I'm interested in the match between MJF and Kenny Omega. I don't know who's not. If you're a wrestling fan, that's fascinating, right? That's a good one.
You gotta get some mental
like think about stuff.
The one thing you don't see on TV, and I know we'll probably get to it when Flair, and it didn't show it on TV. When he exited the ring, they were helping him down the steps. Like, a guy was holding his hand when he was coming down the steps. I don't think they caught that on TV, but watching that, you're like, yeah, he's,
absolutely, absolutely. Let's talk about that.
Yep.
Our opening segment. We had MJF versus Juice Robinson, and then the MJF and Kenny Omega promo. Let's first talk about the match. Discuss that first. Shad, I'm going to toss it to you out of the gates on this one.
Rock hard. The match was a solid match. It was a solid bout. What I enjoyed most, honestly, was Jay White's analysis of it on the play-by-play and everything that kind of led towards after it. The match itself was a match. It was okay. It wasn't too bad. It wasn't the best MJF match I've seen from him. But I'm loving the progression of this storyline between the Bullet Club Gold and MJF, and especially with Jay White. Like, you can see that he's trying to show that he's about business. He's gonna not give him his belt back, and he's he's playing the heel role really well, and you're just seeing the annoyance of MJF because he wants that big gold bell back. And I mean, we kind of briefly talked about it earlier. I think they kind of covered ground on a bunch of different feuds that MJF has, and I like it. I think it's solid. He's the world champ. The the target is on his back, and that's how it should be. When you the world champ, the target needs to be on your back. And what's interesting is because MJF is now more playing a babyface type of role, you kind of see him feeling the adversity of being the champ and doing stuff more in a clean way. Obviously, he cheated in a sense to win the match last night, but you're still seeing him kind of go through the adversities that baby faces have to go through against going against heel competition. And I mean, we see what's going on with him in Bullet Club Gold. It's a numbers game. He's trying to figure out who he's going to have on his side for this matchup. There's two sets of tags that he kind of rejected last night, or trios that he rejected last night that he doesn't want to have them join. So I'm curious to see that. And we saw obviously that's not part of this promo, but we saw the vignette with Wardlow. You saw his interaction with Kenny at the end of it, which I loved because I think that's just a great story. That's a great mini little filler storyline that you could fill in just off of the historical aspect of the longest reigning champs. And we got to see the devil again. And I'm curious to see what's going to happen in that. So there was a lot that went on with this, but overall, I liked it. I think there was a lot of progression of it, and I think it was one of the highlights of the show.
Do you think this confirms that absolutely the devil is not MJF, the
I
guy
don't think
behind the
no.
mask?
I like I said when the first initial jump and have happened. Now it's not gonna tie with my initial thought process where it's gonna be the kingdom was the other people and the guy in the mask who I still think is Kyle O'Reilly. I think it's Kyle O'Reilly. Who the other people are, I don't know. It may be some people we don't know who it is. I know that Anthony initially said it could just be fillers for the time being, and it may be to cast the people that got released from WWE and they eventually make a signing. We'll have to wait and see, but I do not think it's MJF. They're alluding to it to not really be him, and I like that. I'm glad that they're finally coming back to it. They didn't touch on that for a while, so I'm glad that they're finally coming back to it.
I love it too. It feels very much right now like they're just taking a chess piece and just nudging it one space. Right? There's no horses jumping. There's no bishops going across the board. It's just a couple of pawns. Nudge, 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 nudge. And it gets more interesting as we get closer to that reveal. It's one of my favorite things about the story. Personally, obviously you were in the arena, Anthony, so I'm going to toss the same question to you.
Mm-hmm.
How did you feel about the whole thing? How did you feel about the idea of Omega immediately following it? I found that fascinating because I think it was the most unexpected thing about the match.
Yeah, I mean, as a whole, I really enjoyed the match. I thought it was a solid opener. The crowd was very much into it. So I like I said, I enjoyed it. Omega challenge him. It makes sense because they're running. They've been running this whole thing where Max keeps throwing out the taunt that I'm almost the longest reigning champ. So you had to do something. And as we know, they have been struggling on Saturdays with collision ratings. It makes sense to book that there. I thought that made sense. As far as the devil, I have said since day one, I never thought it was MJF. I always felt that it was somebody either trying to frame him or playing mind games with him. I do love the fact that, MJF's the only one that I could think of in wrestling where there's always been the saying, as the world champion, all the targets on your back. But we've seen so many times over the years, it always follows the same formula. It's one challenger for this month or a couple months where you're feuding with them. You never really get the multiple challengers unless it's like a triple threat or a fatal four way. In this scenario, literally everyone's targeting him. And plus, because he is a scumbag, So he doesn't really have the ally. So I do love that. Now, Ben tried to get it out of me earlier on who I thought this person was. I don't think it's Punk. I know people are saying it's Punk. I don't believe it's Punk.
Whoa, not people. Only I said that.
You've said it, and I think I've seen
I said it first.
You were the originator. I don't believe it's him.
It's 40,000 views online. 40,000 people watched me say it first.
Listen, I'm giving you credit. I'm not saying you weren't. You were saying it even when we were throwing out him coming out the Survivor Series, which I started with that. But the person who I think it might be, because I'm thinking, all right, logically, I'm like, well, Adam Cole's going to be out for a while. Are they really going to drag that out till Adam gets back? I don't think it's Kyle, only because I don't think Kyle can carry a heel stable. Like if he's the face of the stable, Kyle's never really shown that. I like Kyle a lot, but I don't think he has to carry a stable. I don't know if this person does, but this person's been gone for a while, and he does have history with Max. What if it's Jack Perry?
Yeah.
I mean, he's a heel. He's been gone a while. It adds extra heat to him because if people thought it was Punk, he literally goes, "Oh, did you think it was somebody else? I got rid of him." Like, I mean, there's so much they could do with that. As far as who makes up the rest of the group, whether it's WWE cast-offs or people that are underutilized in AEW, and he can kind of almost do his own retribution type thing, he could. But it would make sense because he could feud with Max because now he's a heel and Max is the lovable scumbag. I don't know if that's the right way to put it, but only in wrestling can a babyface get "you're our scumbag," or in Kurt Angle's case, "you suck," as a term of endearment during a Hall of Fame induction. You know, only in wrestling.
You know what? And I agree with you, but I will say this about MJF's current run. You look at that second run from DX, and they've obviously very much in 2006, given the nature of the beast, had to put some concepts aside. They couldn't quite be as aggressive as they were.
And Sean changed too. Sean
very much
the same
as well. You had the Sean factor in as well. Yeah. Now, when you look at original DX, they were technically faces at first, heels, tweeners. In a way, morally, anti-hero.
Yeah.
Morally, they weren't in a position. I think that's kind of the brilliance of what MJF's current run is. And I will say, I do believe he isn't a true, finger quotes, babyface. But in the only way you could turn a character with the depth and quality of Max is something like this, where you're almost poking fun at the meaning of a traditional babyface. He cheated the win last night, and we all loved it.
Oh, yeah.
It's like the kid that's charismatic in school that cheats to pass his math test, and that's all he needed to get the scholarship in college, right?
Look at Eddie
That's
Guerrero.
all he needed to do, and you're just rooting for him. Because you know
Guerrero,
what? So what?
If you're not cheating, you're not trying. Like he was
Eddie
beloved
Guerrero
for
is
that.
The perfect example. Yes, Anthony. Eddie Guerrero is the perfect example, beloved for that. Yeah. And that is, and not to toot my own horn, but speaking of things that I said out loud, very much on yesterday's show, I said, MJF uses the ring and wins. Very much last night, MJF used the ring and won, which is great. And shout out D Price. I can't wait to get eviscerated by whoever that guy is you're such a big fan of. I'm just saying. While I'm up with that, though, let's move on to the next topic of this evening.
Price is right.
Of course, Hook and Rob Van Dam against the Dark Order. This was a bit of a funky one. You know I'm the number one Hookamaniac. So before I toss it to you, I have to get that in. As a Hookamaniac, I was running wild the whole time. I ate my chips and I posted my TikToks as Hook, I would assume, being the modern day Hogan, would want me to do. Okay. And I'm just excited about this result. The Hookster is back in the fold with a legend like RVD. I cannot wait to see what he does with it. Anthony, what did you think of the results on this one?
I mean, honestly, it was booked for one reason and one reason only, because it was ECW territory. That's why this is booked. Taz's son and RVD. Like this was essentially, here's a squash match for nostalgia purposes for the fans of Philadelphia. We know Tony Khan was a big ECW fan growing up. He said he would go to the ECW arena for shows, so it makes sense. RVD having a nice little pop in the city, which he always gets anyway. Uh, it was a fun little match. Nothing over the top, but it was 100%. This is for nostalgia. That's what this is.
Absolutely. I agree with you on that. And honestly, though, I will say this for a Wednesday night show, right? A weekly show, I don't mind it necessarily when they do that with a guy like RVD in Philly. Booking for the city is smart.
Yeah.
It's still a live show. You got to cater to the live crowd with stuff like that.
Very much. Yeah. Shad, like, you're a Philly fan too. You have similar feelings?
Yeah. I mean, Anthony's point is pretty much what it is. It's booked because they're kind of catering to the fans and it being an ECW territory. And I mean, that's kind of what you do. You give RVD the respect for that, and you have Hook, who's obviously tied to Taz, who's an ECW legend. It all makes sense. I don't know if this means RVD is going to be more regularly on the programming. I don't know if this means that he'll have a program with anyone. It probably doesn't. It's kind of one of these like spotty situations, but that's kind of what AEW is, right? They do a lot of, not saying in a bad way, but they have a lot of stuff that's tied to like, I want to just throw a dope match for the card so the fans can appreciate it and whatnot. And I'll say this, man, RVD, for a dude who's in his 50s, he ain't obviously what he was in his prime, but he wrestles pretty well for his age, man.
Oh, no question. I'm with you on that. Yes, absolutely. He can still go. There's it's hard to debate that. Let's move on to our next segment though.
Yep.
And I'm gonna actually change it up as the host. I know you guys can see it too in the private chat. It's the Hung Bucks versus the Hardys. It was a match. It was great.
Yeah.
It speaking of nostalgia, but we just had a nostalgia discussion. That is so much less fun than what.
Honest, I don't think the Hardys should be wrestling anymore.
That is for a different show, Anthony. Because
I know, but I'm just saying.
No. Only because I respect that opinion so much. We could do about 15 minutes on that, and I think a lot of us are in agreement there. And I wouldn't even necessarily say both Hardys, but Jeff specifically. God bless him, one of my favorites ever. But right, let's not make this about that. Let's talk about something that has often been complained about, whether it be internet, whether it be on Wrestling Republic, whether it be on the Daily, storytelling in AEW. Talk to me about Swerve and Hangman, and then tell me about storytelling on AEW, because not a lot of people see someone stand over the crib. Stand over the crib? Are you kidding me? Swerve Strickland is operating on a level and the production and creative freedom that has been unlocked. This is the Swerve we've always not only needed, but wanted. And on top of that, to work with a performer as passionate, as excellent, and whose character fits this storyline, as well as Hangman, is absolutely brilliant. And I will not allow us to leave this segment before I acknowledge that, because it's brilliant. Because there are not two people, maybe in any company, outside of some real long-term story stuff, that I want to see lock up real quick than Hangman Page and Swerve Strickland right now. Shad, I'm going to toss it to you. How did you feel about, I mean, that dude is a sadistic.
Look, man, I'm going to be completely real with you. I think it's time for us to just be real and understand that the biggest fumbled bag that WWE had that was a talent that eventually went to AEW is Swerve Strickland. The fact that you did not let this guy, who is a creative genius when it comes to character work, he is a mastermind as a heel, and didn't give him the creative genius to do whatever he is doing right now in WWE. WWE does a lot of great, and I'm very happy for Swerve because the freedom that he has to kind of roll for what he's doing is top notch right now. And man, he's everyone's gonna hate me for saying this. I think without a doubt, last night and last night, the thing with Nick Wayne at Nick Wayne's house, like he's the best heel in AEW. He doesn't need to take ribs at people's, you know, deceased parents. He doesn't need to
Oh,
diss the crowd and all that. The stuff that he does is a mastermind heel, man. And a lot of it comes off of the production side of it, like you said. That's something that WWE leans very heavy on and they're very good at. But AEW does a good job when they let Swerve do stuff like that. Last night, and I'm very, these breaking in the house things, we've seen it happen before, but I was watching that when he went to the baby's room and he's talking to that infant by the crib and just basically saying that your dad is the reason why. I'm gonna take. He took one of mine. I might as well take one of yours. And just as you at the edge of your seat, you're like, no, come on, Swerve, like, relax. It's just a child. And
please don't do anything.
Just throws the t-shirt like, oh my god, man, it pure genius, man. The two storylines I care the most about in professional wrestling right now is him and Hangman Adam Page, because there is a completely new element to it now. We talked about it a few weeks ago where we were like, this is really good, and we're unfortunate that it's happening so quickly to the pay-per-view. So glad they're extending it. This adds it to a new element. You're playing with a man's family. Like, this is gonna be really good. This is the best storyline in AEW. This, and we always talk about Tuesday Night Trick and Carmelo Hayes, like this long-term storytelling where there's so much personal emotion to it. Yeah, it's top notch. Isaiah Swerve Scott, formerly known in WWE, Swerve Strickland. This dude he's my favorite wrestler in AEW, and he's the best heel in AEW. MJF, Christian, I'm sorry. Whose house? Swerve's house.
I 100% hear you, because especially what's so fascinating to me about Swerve, and you mentioned a lot of, you mentioned Christian, you mentioned MJF. MJF, we talked about in the last segment, I feel like he's more of a babyface right now. I think if working the heel role, that's a conversation to be had. Christian Swerve, that one, I will fully admit, I agree. And I thought Christian was doing some of the best work. Is not was.
No, he
doing
is
one of the best work
he
of his
is,
career.
but it's completely different element. Like it makes you. It's like a villain in a movie.
The calculation from Swerve is, and I mentioned yesterday on the show, I think you should go to the stables. And Ben did well, they did the whole thing. Hangman's horse died. Like, you don't think he has another one in our stables? No. Going to the crib is very different than your horse. And going to his home, right? We've seen Seth Rollins do that with Edge in WWE, right? We've seen people go to each other's houses. We've seen Edge do it with John Cena's dad. You know what I mean? That's one of my favorites of all time. This one was, in a weird way, tastefully so serious, because they put the toes on the line. And when I say they, I mean AEW. Swerve included, right? Toes on the line of, you're messing with like a newborn. That is as hard as you can toe that line. And it was so perfectly navigated. That's the beauty of Swerve as a performer, I believe. As a whole, that's what's so brilliant, is you saw, was sitting there like, please don't mess with the kid. Like, talk to him, but don't mess with the kid.
I was watching with my girl. She's like, "What is going on? Like, this is like very scary."
This is
Like,
scary. No, genuinely, like, like, I joked about being scared or whatever with the light thing when we're, but
no, this is scary
I
when you
was
when,
no.
when
This
you.
one was like one of those like, it's where you're like, no, 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 don't do it, don't, no, no, don't do it, and it was just it sublime in my eyes. Performance from Swerve, and it's as a fan, I can remove myself from it, but as soon as I start suspending disbelief, I just want to see Hangman clothesline him
Oh
into
yeah.
oblivion for it, of course. Right? As soon as I start suspending disbelief, and that's exactly what a character like Hangman Page needs. You saw the
Mhm.
passion in his promo. This is as well built as anything AEW's done in a long time. And the gnarliest part to me is that it's away from a title.
Oh yeah, for
Like,
sure.
what? There's no title in the picture. It's about pure storytelling,
Storytelling.
pure hatred, pure jealousy, pure envy. All of those things encapsulated in one. And they don't need it to. I would not mind a three-piece on this one. 3 times. Let's see a singles match. And I want it to be built. I don't want it to be booked ahead of time. Of course not. But in the long run, if I'm going to stretch this out, are you kidding me on Swerve versus Hangman in a singles match, which will be a banger?
Well, they've already
Then
done
you
that.
add on top of and one more though.
No.
When Hangman's upset, right? Then it builds to the next one, and you do it whether it be Swerve's way or Hangman's way, and you added a stipulation, and then there has to be a Texas death match between these two, because what Cole and Page did in that scenario was off the charts. And that's with the between the submission and the 10 count rules and the lack of rules period outside of that. What these two can do with that, to me, is, and it's sublime. It's as much as you could ask out of two competitors. I hope they keep us this captivated along the way. And based on last night and the last few months of build, I think it's not just possible, probable. And that's kind of scary to me. What do you think on that, Anthony?
The complaint that I had, I know you guys were big fans of the first go around, what they did with the contract signing. I didn't like the contract signing because it didn't have that personal take to it. To me, last night did. What I saw last night was very much like a serial killer, like a villain, like very dark. And I liked that because it was different. It reminded me very much of, you know, the beginning stages of like Orton, when Orton started getting that sadistic side, and you wanted to see whoever he's feuding with get their hands on him. So to me, you could build stuff off of that. I would have actually preferred if they would have gone this route before they ever touched. I would have done this before the first match. Like, it doesn't really make sense to me of going, okay, him losing the first match made him snap. He was always this way. They beat up Nick Wayne. Like, he already had this sick side. So why not go this route in the beginning? And each time they're fighting, it's gotta escalate. Like, I don't think you can just do another singles match the next match too. Like, I think you need to up the ante and keep doing it until you finally blow this thing off. Because I think they have the ability to make this a rivalry of the year, whenever
Right.
whenever this takes place. But I just doing another singles, I don't think is a good move. But I do like where it went. It was very dark. It almost reminded me of, like, I mean, I know they're bad, but like the Steven Seagal movies, like sometimes like the villain, like the over the top, sadistic side. That's what it reminded me of a little bit. And then, as you're caught up in the moment, my buddy Chris said to me after he threw the t-shirt in the crib, he went, "Free merch." I went, "All right, now you just broke me on that," but okay.
That is funny. Wait, and by the way, to be clear, I actually meant they've already had the singles match. I meant that's out of the way. Two more. So a stipulation on Swerve's side. I only meant two more after, not another
gotcha,
single
okay.
on top. I may have communicated it poorly there, but like that, what I meant was we've had the singles match. We had the contract signing. And what I thought was brilliant personally about the contract signing was Swerve almost explaining what drove him to be this sadistic and you got the opportunities and you got this and you got that. And we've seen that a lot in wrestling. But no, wait, hear me out on this, Anthony.
Yeah.
We've seen that a lot in wrestling. What made this so intriguing to me was actually Hangman's reaction, because he went back into anxious millennial cowboy mode.
Yeah, that's what I didn't like.
And he said, there's a lot of truth. You're right. You are that talented. I know you're that good. Now it's even more personal, right? Because jealousy is what started it. And that explains why Swerve is as sadistic and heelish as he is. This started on pure peanut butter and jealous. You know, that's how it started. But Strickland knows how good he is. So does Hangman. And it's true old school heel babyface work. That's where I'm like so intrigued by this one compared to other storylines, because I get why Hangman is fighting from underneath. And I also get why Swerve's upset, but the behavior doesn't align necessarily with the relatable story he told about why. You know what I mean? I do understand the contract signing in and of itself. I feel like it was one of those things where you really did have to be kind of invested in both. Not that you weren't invested,
no.
But you had to be invested in both in a way where you're looking and you're like, psychologically, it adds up on both sides. It just does. I don't know. It's an interesting one.
Yeah. The lifeblood of this business is always going to be storytelling.
Yes.
The build up to the match and the match itself. Anybody that goes, it's the moves, it ain't the moves. The moves get you somewhat recognition. What's remembered are the moments and the stories that are told.
I completely agree. And I've always believed to add to that I mean, the key to the operation is wrestling matches are amazing and we'll keep watching them as wrestling fans. But when you can make it feel like a fight, when you can make it feel like they have to fight each other, that's when it becomes. And I think there's no scenario right now where Swerve and Hangman 2 is not a fight. That's a fight.
The crazy thing is this: Hangman is probably the best at like within storylines, like committed like storylines that have a lot of realism. Like I feel like the greatest storyline was his coming up and eventually getting the title and everything that led with him and, you know, breaking off of the Elite and his feud with Kenny and with the Young Bucks, and then obviously becoming friends with the Dark Order and all that. Like he's got that vulnerability as a person that's very empathetic that you can relate to. And I feel he taps into that within his wrestling character, which may be, like you said, millennial cowboy, that may be true to himself. And he does it very well. And like the vulnerability, like that's one thing as a man, as a father, as a husband, you let someone break into your house and get into the room of your child. Like that adds a lot of human emotion to it where you're invested and you want to see him get his comeuppance and you want to see him win this feud.
100%. And I think that is part of the brilliance. Top 5 comment here from Matt Williams. Top 5 wrestling feud house break-in ever. The people are asking. Matt Williams, that is an excellent question. I would have to look back.
The only one, and again, it would take time to look at. But
Pillman's Got a Gun has to be top 5.
Pillman's Got a Gun is up there, and I think the other one is Triple H throwing Orton through the window onto the lawn.
Edge at Cena's dad's.
Oh yeah, beating up Cena dad.
When we didn't, who went to Dusty's that started when they did the, what you call it, the freeway, the
Shout
freeway
outs to
match.
Impact. Deanna Peraza going to
That
Mickey
one is
James's
in there.
barn, and
Oh
they was
yeah,
fighting.
that was
Yes.
That's one of my favorite
they
ones.
did the Briscoes farm.
Well,
They
by the way,
Yeah.
the Briscoes were kings of that.
Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
going to
But-
houses, but just farm stuff.
But the one thing to go back, because I know we're trying to get on schedule here. The one
You're
thing
good.
that I always think of with any of these feuds, there's a description that Paul Heyman gave that is the most succinct way you can do it. They asked, how do you sell a story? He goes, you need to answer 3 questions. Who are these people? Why are they fighting? And why should I care? If you
Right.
answer those 3 questions, you have a winning angle.
100%. I'm with you there. Let's move on to our next segment, though. Let's
Mhm.
talk about it. And I don't want to get into my strut.
Woo!
No.
Woo!
No. Dun dun. Woo!
Nicely done.
Ric Flair debuts
Mm-hmm.
on AEW
No.
as the big surprise.
Mhm.
Believe it or not. First thing, who's the big surprise? Flair's the big surprise.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, what more could you ask for? I guess other than there's probably more you could ask for
Mhm.
now that I think about it, but not the point. It's always great to see Slick Rick styling and profiling
Mm-hmm.
on live television. We haven't seen in 20 years. Sting, Flair, and Shivani
Mm-hmm.
in the ring together. That was nothing short of delightful. Anthony, as our resident historian here, I'm going to toss this straight to you.
Yeah.
Because you were also in the building. What'd you
Yeah,
think
that-
of it?
Yeah. That was one of those moments that the funny part was the Tron came on first, but the name didn't appear first. So at first, I had no idea who it was going to be. I didn't even know it was a person. Like, I didn't know what was going to be on the Tron. Then the music hit, and I went, no way. Like, that really was a holy you-know-what moment. Like, legitimately being there, watching Ric Flair come out there and seeing that reunion. And I know people go, oh, it's Rick. He's been doing the same thing for 50 years. He's a legend. At some point, we don't know, he's going to do his last strut and his last woo. We've seen so many of these legends pass. Dusty, Macho, Piper. We would love to have another Macho promo. We would love to have another Dusty. Appreciate it for what it is. Rick went out there. It wasn't about him. It was about Sting. But it's Ric Flair. Other than Hogan, he's the only of the big 2 of the 80s. Those are the 2 major ones left. Other than maybe Vince. Vince would probably be the other one. As far as, is pivotal and is important to the business. So to see Rick back with Shivani, I'm pretty sure, and I can't swear, I'm sure Rick and Sting I'm pretty sure they had moments in WWE for the brief time that Sting was there. Reunions or whatever. I think Hogan's birthday, I think they were both there. So they've had moments, but Shivani and Flair, that has to be maybe 2001 when WCW closed. Might have been the last time.
I don't even know that Shivani was still there.
No, Shivani commentated the last Nitro.
He did,
but he didn't interview him. Like, I think the last time that they were together
in a ring.
Yeah, it has to be. And even with Nitro, it was Mean Gene really interviewing them. So, like, it might be the Crockett days. Like, it's been several decades since they've been all together. I thought it was a nice moment. Having Flair out there, Christian taking his shots, which, somebody said, oh, Rick should be offended. I think Rick was smirking. I'll be honest to God. I think Rick was loving it. Rick's known as one of the greatest heels of all time. He loved that because you could tell he was smirking. Like, you saw it, and he's like, Rick approved of everything he was saying. Rick's carny. Rick's into that stuff. But yeah, it was an awesome moment. Having just Rick going this last leg of this thing with Sting till March, that'd be awesome. I don't think WWE is going to be that upset about it. It's Rick. How upset you going to be? You're not going to block Ric Flair. Let's be honest.
100%. I'm with you on that. And it's awesome that I agree with you so much on that perspective. It's like, wait a minute, we got Ric Flair in the ring and live in the arena too. I can't even imagine that.
Oh, it was, it was such a moment. Like it was like this was any last minute decision to go to the show. That moment alone, I'm like, I don't care what's on the rest of this show.
Right.
I got Ric Flair.
You got Flair.
And Sting,
no doubt.
all together. That's one of the pivotal moments in the business. Like, will be looked back on.
I'm with you there, too, and we could talk about this for hours. But we got to get through, actually, 2 quick ones, really quick, before we head to Throwback. And we want to get to Throwback because we promised you guys Throwback Thursday, and that's why we're going 60 minutes. Apologies to Ben, Allison. I made the call. We're going 60.
There is an irony on the Flair episode. The man that went 60 always went 60. We're going 60.
Yeah, we're doing it for Flair. We're going Broadway for Flair tonight. But here's the deal. Up next, we had Hikaru Shida versus Ruby Soho. Break the whole thing down for me, Shad.
Trash. Basura wasn't good. This was a really bad match. The chemistry, and it makes me, let me say something real quick. It hurts for me to say that because I'm a big fan of Hikaru Shida. I think she's the best women's AEW champion of all time. I think she's one of the best wrestlers in the women's division. But the chemistry of these two did not mesh. There was a lot of clunkiness, a lot of botches, a weird ending. Like there wasn't really anything good about it. And it sucks because we only had one women's match last night on a 2-hour card on a week where we had 15 women be on the Raw roster. NXT had 5 women's matches. AEW gives us one. It's at the 9:20 slot, and it's a women's championship match, and it didn't feel like that, and the match didn't deliver. There was no build to it. I didn't like it. The thing I liked the most was Toni Storm coming at the end. I love that. I love the theatrics of her. I love the black and white, and then it cutting the Sheeta in his back in color. That's the only thing I liked about the match. This match was trash, and I don't want to be negative because this episode was really good, but this was the lowest point. And I hate it because you know me, Clark, I'm a women's wrestling advocate. I love women's wrestling. Becky Lynch is the GOAT. That has nothing to do with this, but I wasn't a fan of it, bro.
I completely hear you. And it's unfortunate because you have 2 great talents. I'm a fan of both myself, but I kind of agree. This felt like that video game match where you're like, oh, we'll kick out and then it's going to get better.
They may have not got enough reps together too. And they may have not got a lot of reps to have to mesh in the chemistry either.
But even the kick out at the end, or the non-kick out, right? When the finish happened, I myself was like, really?
And I didn't get the belt spot while she was trying to use the belt. Like,
don't get it at all.
It was not good at all. My only thought is I'm more invested in Toni Storm than I am any of these two. Ruby getting passed over again, and the last thought, because I know we got to rush here, is it must really pay off to be Jericho's friend that Luther still has a job, that they stuck him now.
Well, he's a producer. I got to give Luther credit. Honestly, Luther's a great guy. Luther's cool. I met him at All Out 21. Luther's great. He's talented.
Didn't he look like the Kingpin? Like that's the look they went for there with the white jacket, bald head. It was the Kingpin.
Yeah.
But anyway,
you gotta love Luther. Either way, let's get on to a huge match that we're gonna rush through because Throwback Thursday is more important.
Yes.
And I agree with that. It is.
It is.
Because also I called this word for word yesterday on yesterday's show. So you can just go watch the replay on live. Okada and Orange Cassidy so that Orange Cassidy can take the fall. Whoops. Right again. Maybe I shouldn't be booking. You're right. But at least I know what everyone else is booking. Just saying, not to toot my own horn once again, but while I'm up, I'm going to toot it. Anyway, we've got Okada and Cassidy against Danielson and Castagnoli of the Blackpool Combat Club. They used to be Regal Boys. In a match, OC takes the pin. Anthony, talk to me about this one real quick.
Two real quick thoughts. I was surprised at how over Okada was in Philly. Like I thought he would get a cheer, but like he got a really, really big reaction, which surprised me a little bit. I love seeing the strength of Claudio live with OC, because when he grabbed him to swing him and launching him up with the uppercut, I don't know if it fully captured it on TV, but like it was like a paperweight. Like I loved the finish because I want him to finish matches with that uppercut. It looked beautiful live. Like in the arena, the finish, I loved it. I don't know if it came across the same way on TV, but I like the finish personally.
Absolutely, I hear you there. Shad, do you have anything to add about this one?
Nah, this match was a lot of fun. I mean, you're not gonna go wrong when you have Okada, Bryan Danielson, Claudio, Yuta, and the man Orange Cassidy. I liked it a lot. I think you obviously, I like the ending of it a lot. I like the playoff of Danielson really getting hurt and them kind of having this whole like faction upon faction, group upon group thing. And I'm excited. I hope it builds to a Okada and Danielson, too, because their last match was incredible. And I think now you have a storyline implemented from what happened last night. So yeah, incredible match. They knocked it out the park with that.
Absolutely, I'm with you. And again, I knew OC was going to take the pin, but I will not stand for Pockets hate. As our good friend Carnett says, I don't know who that other guy they were talking about in the chat that would eviscerate me was talking about, but I really like whoever the Carter's identical twin, Cardi Carnett, what he's talking about, the Pockets guy, Orange Cassidy, I'm a fan of. I'm a fan of him. Always have been. With that, let's move into Throwback Thursday, which is my favorite segment of the week. And I'm going to toss it straight to you, Anthony. We're talking Halloween Havoc 98. We're a little short on time, so just get after it.
Yeah, we wanted to do a Halloween one since, the season it is.
Well, it's close to Halloween.
And the next show will be after Halloween, so it has to be this one. So this show was famous for like two main matches. One being Warrior and Hogan, which is the only second. It was the rematch from WrestleMania 6, which Hogan has been accused over the years is he talked Bischoff into bringing Warrior in just to get his win back from WrestleMania 6. This match is a train wreck. Absolutely 110%. Absolute mess. There's a flaming paper spot. It's absolute trash. Hogan gets his win. It's the only match of Warrior at the event. The other one is Goldberg and DDP. Now this one's famous because the pay-per-view cut out. Now for the general public that doesn't know, used to streaming, they used to pay a pay-per-view provider for 3 hours of content for the pay-per-view. If that pay-per-view didn't end at 11 o'clock, they were cut off regardless. It didn't matter. That's what happened in this situation. The show ran long. Just as the main event's about to start with DDP and Goldberg, it cut out. So people didn't see it. So WCW had a problem where, okay, do we have to refund everybody? What they ultimately ended up doing was showing the match the next night in its entirety on Nitro, and people got the free replay, I think Tuesday night, if they wanted to watch the full pay-per-view, that WCW would cover it. This match, to me, is Goldberg's best match of his career. And this was the match, and Clark, you may disagree with me on this. I think DDP and this match should have been the one to end Goldberg's streak. It would have been believable. Ooh. DDP was the people's champ. There were moments in that match. It made sense. Long before RKO out of anywhere, it was the diamond cutter that can literally come out of anywhere. And DDP was notorious for finding new ways to deliver the move. I think that would have worked. DDP could have gotten the win. I don't think it would have hurt Goldberg because the audience loved DDP. And that would have been the safest way to end the streak. And it would have been believable for DDP to pull it out, because there's a moment in that match where DDP's in the corner and Goldberg full force is going in
Right.
shoulder, and DDP moves and he runs into the post.
So, Anthony, I would ask you quickly, though.
Yes.
And this is so fascinating because I agree with you. And it's funny because we look back at DDP's career and we talk about how he was looked upon as green, right? He's a late bloomer.
Yes.
He's our late bloomer example.
Mm-hmm.
You look at a guy like Goldberg, it's fascinating that at the height of both of their careers, essentially, they had the match against each other. And that's where the most magic was created. Do you believe in any way that maybe Goldberg and DDP facing a less veteran roster may have had even more success than they already did?
They were going against the tide because a lot of the upper echelon in WCW had creative control, and they really didn't want to put young talent over. Even though DDP was close to their age, as far as experience in the business, he only had a couple more years over Goldberg, really. So I think that hurt them. The management and letting people to just kind of do whatever they wanted up the top ultimately hurt in that end. But I think DDP over Goldberg at Halloween Havoc would have been the right booking decision. Certainly better than the cattle prod that ultimately did end this. And also, the follow-up of the finger poke of doom, which we have not covered either one of those.
Of course, we'll get there.
We'll get there. But like
with
for
that,
me, this one was the one that should have went over.
100%. With that, Shad is back.
My bad. I had technical difficulties because of my
fine. By the way, the audience doesn't know, so you don't have to apologize.
Which there's an irony there.
I'm going to introduce this to you, though, because we just had a great discussion about Goldberg, DDP, all this stuff. But I do want to give you time. You wore the purple. And originally, there's a funny thing. The topic is supposed to be Halloween Havoc 98, which me and Anthony covered perfectly there. Shad then had technical difficulties because of his cat. He knows I'm afraid of scary movies. This is our shot at Halloween, though. But talk to me about the Rey Mysterio Halloween Havoc gear.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we've... Look, I know a lot of y'all young whippersnappers know it because it was part of the... was it WWE 2K22, right? With Ray on the cover, where you could go through his mode with the wonderful color purple. But you had that infamous ring gear, the purple, one of the best ring gears that you could have with all the the bodysuit. It had the question marks on it and stuff, right?
Yep.
It was a super fresh fly gear, and I love Halloween Havoc. I always thought that was one of the more fun pay-per-views that WCW had during that late 90s era. Obviously 97 was a great card. 98, like y'all broke down, was an incredible card. And I love that we're keeping it going. NXT, we just reviewed a Halloween Havoc pay-per-view, or not pay-per-view, they're doing a 2-week special on it. Tune in this Tuesday. It's gonna be Halloween Day.
Yes.
But it's great, man. And then that match is a banger. That's one of the great matches that Eddie and Ray have had against each other in their long rivaling careers as nemesis and whatnot. So definitely great, and that's why wore the purple especially for that. It's not a Rey Mysterio shirt, but yeah.
I love it. I'm with you. And Bobby Petito added, though, how about that match between Chris Jericho and Raven at Halloween Havoc? That was underrated and outstanding as well.
I didn't realize this. This show was also the one where Rick's trying to get Scott Steiner, but this is the one with Kevin Nash and Scott Hall, where Nash power bombs Scott Hall and just leaves him in the ring. Do you remember that whole last call thing, the drunk thing? It was that's. We
also had a comment also when you're breaking down Halloween Havoc 98, Anthony, from Mr. Speedy, Mr. Speedy, which of course is facts. I can say that one. And I'm sure that had to do with your breakdown of Halloween Havoc 98. with that, that does bring us to the end of another fantastic
Stupendous.
Throwback Thursday. Stupendous. The most stupendous Throwback Thursday
There you go.
you've ever seen. But we'll see you guys soon. Tomorrow we'll be back on at noon Pacific, my time, 8 in the UK, 3 p.m. these two's time. Eastern, that is standard. And then, that's 2 in the central, that's 1 in the mountains. And of course, it's 9 a.m. in Hawaii. If you haven't already liked and subscribed, it means the world to us. Please do. Thank you so much. Thanks for tuning in once again on behalf of Anthony and Shad and all of Wrestling Republic. We'll see you guys soon.
Here.